Do you have any tips on how to improve writing since you went through the struggle?
For sure, I would definitely say, practice and then get feedback from people that you perceive as good writers. It's really difficult if you write something and then you read it like 20 times and tweak it 20 times. It's really valuable to get feedback from others, right? So like as an example, my wife, she's a much better writer than I am. And like, especially when I was doing things like the OSCP and the CPTS exam, I'm like, hey, like, what do you think about these mock reports I've written for like this box? I didn't hack the box. I'm not, so, I'm gonna have to write this for real, right? And it's not like, something where I send it to my boss and he give me feedback back and forth that goes, directly quote unquote to the client. So yeah, work with people that you're comfortable with, that you feel like can help coach you.
Welcome to the Hacker's Cache, the show that decrypts the secrets of cybersecurity one byte at a time. I'm your host, Kyser Clark, and today I have Jim Schultz, who is an OSCP-certified cybersecurity consultant and penetration tester with more than 15 years of hands-on experience. He's worked across application security, incident response, and GRC, while also spending years teaching cybersecurity at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and Waukesha County Technical College. Jim now focuses full-time on consulting, where he helps organizations strengthen their defenses through penetration testing, secure code reviews, and strategic security assessments. So, Jim, thank you so much for hopping on the Hackers Cache podcast. Go ahead and walk through your background and introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. Again, my name is Jim. I guess I'll start probably way back from the beginning. So I've been in technology and IT kind of like my entire life. And I'm a child of the 90s, kind of set the stage for this. So think about, growing up in the mid 90s, Super Nintendo, eventually Nintendo 64, Game Boy with Pokemon. I really enjoyed the concept of like this technology getting delivered to your hands on these cool, innovative screens. Growing up, I loved the idea of the future. So like for me, like I really wanted to figure out how these devices worked. My friends, we had Game Shark, cheat codes. It's like, oh, there's like ways you can kind of sidestep, the intended path when you're working with tech. So really kind of at that point, like I thought this stuff really kind of piqued my curiosity. And I really wanted to get more into that. At that time in the 90s, especially, like most people didn't have like a computer at home. And if you did, it was like a family computer everybody would share, right? So after like years of pleading, this is what felt like years, as you're a kid growing up, time seems to move like quite slow. I convinced my family to get like our first family computer. And that's when I really kind of fell in love with IT and kind of when I really realized like this is going to be my path in life. So, late 90s, no one else in my computer and my family knew anything really about computers or IT. But I knew I really wanted to figure out how this thing worked because I was so like just interested about this thing you could load applications on and would connect you out to the internet. At the time, we had dial-up, but super curious to learn. So what do you think, at this time, like a 10-year-old kid would do to get the first family computer? Super excited. I had decided to take it apart and my parents were super pissed off. This big expensive computer. And my dad at the time, he's like, well, you took it apart. You have to figure out how to put it back together. Inevitably, I did. And I love that experience. I wanted to learn more, but I didn't really have anybody to help me, right? So what do you do in the late 90s when you want to learn more about computers, right? You don't have any friends that are into that stuff. Your parents are kind of, like, well, this is Jim. He's interested in that thing. We don't really know how to help him. I found out how to get online and then through internet relay chat. I got to meet a lot of really interesting folks that would teach me a lot about computers. But, it wasn't just like the good guys on IRC. There are a lot of people kind of in the gray, right, that would teach you all the cool things you could do with them. And they got me super interested. And I learned how to build websites just kind of by reversing, like in the 90s, view source and see how you can mess with the HTML. Learned about, server-side scripting, primarily with PHP, about databases and networks and Linux. And I really love that whole experience. So then, of course, right, kind of going through middle school, typical, a nerd back in that day. And I really, really, really wanted to like work with computers for a job. And when I got to like 14, 15, I started looking for computer jobs where, a company would actually hire like a teenager to do some work. And it was pretty much non-existent. And my dad at the time, he was an entrepreneur. And he's like, well, you're really good at this stuff. And there's probably like a career in this for you that's probably pretty lucrative. And he ran a business. And he's like, how would you like to build my business a website and host it? And you could start maybe a company doing that. So he really kind of pushed me to be an entrepreneur. And I started a shared web hosting company doing like web development and hosting for primarily companies like in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin style area, but also had some clients kind of based all around. And I love that experience. It really taught me a lot about how to run a business. It taught me a lot about how to use Linux properly, right? How to build applications. And that was great. And at the same time, going through then high school, I got really interested in like wanting to learn more. So I had an opportunity to go to my local technical college, Waukesha County Technical College. And that was a really good experience. So I spent essentially like, maybe 5 or 6 hours at high school, and then I'd get released. And then I would at night go and take classes at our local tech college. Programming classes, database classes, networking classes. There weren't really security classes at the time, but I loved that. I enjoyed that. I kind of ate that up. And then thinking about the next step in life, my parents, they're like, well, you really need to get like a 4-year degree. This was an associate college I was at. I'd gotten most of my associate's degree done, but they said, you should really get a bachelor's degree. And I said, yes, mom and dad, I love you guys. I trust your judgment. So I started looking for places to go. I knew at the time I didn't want to spend like a lot of money, and I knew I had a lot of college credits. So I thought, okay, where's maybe a place that I could transfer my technical college credits to a university to maybe get my undergraduate degree done a little bit faster? And that kind of led me to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. So most college, seniors, what they do, they go tour a bunch of places, talk with people. I went to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. I actually ended up meeting the assistant dean for the program that ended up going through. And he's like, wow, he's like, you seem pretty motivated as like a senior in high school. I can tell you really want to learn about IT and you really want to apply this like on the job. And I got actually hired my senior year in high school to do like desktop support at the university. That was a really good experience. I really enjoyed that. And this was like at this time around like 2008. So like for me, that got me like, again, like all those like curiosity things about security started coming back because like the university back in 2008, it was kind of a wild place, right? Universities don't usually have a lot of money for IT. There's a lot of researchers with way different needs. So like as an example, and this is not the way of things are anymore, but we had essentially like a /16 allocated to the university. Each device directly connected with a public IP address to the network. And for the most part, these devices were all unmanaged, right? So it was kind of a really interesting environment. And I got to see a lot of things. And I started thinking like, things could probably be done a little bit better. Again, doing desktop support, kind of leading into like the junior sysadmin territory. Like it was a lot of trial by fire, but they got me tons of experience and really kind of allowed me to grow when I did my undergrad. And the cool thing is I was able to get my undergraduate degree done faster. It took me 3 years. So if you're thinking, hey, if you're in high school right now, if you're thinking, hey, should I go to that local tech school and get some classes knocked out? Absolutely, because that can save you a lot of money if you want to go to like a 4-year school. But when I graduated from my program, it timed up really well because my boss at the time, who was kind of like a jack of all trades sysadmin / IT manager for this distributed IT department, primarily managing technology for the IT classes, our labs, servers, kind of custom infrastructure to make online learning work in like, the mid 2000s. He left and I was able to kind of take on his job. And that was a super good experience for me. And one kind of unexpected thing with that is I had a lot of opportunities to hire student employees and mentor them. Get to show them like, this is how you image a device. This is how you troubleshoot drivers. This is how you like build like a basic, bash script, things like that. And I really kind of enjoyed that. Eventually the department kind of grew. I got, up to one point, maybe like 20 or so students and a couple of full-time people kind of under my wing, a web developer and kind of like a service desk lead. And I really kind of enjoyed that mentorship piece. Well, being able to do a lot of different things. I was managing our computer labs, our servers, Active Directory environment, building some custom apps. It was a lot of fun. And I had the opportunity then to also then get to consolidate a lot of that into like the central IT as security, matured right out of the university. Think about like every device connected with a public IP address to now like the 2015s. Security becoming more of like, a thing that the university and organizations needed to take care of. So a lot of cool ways then to harden that environment and do that. And that was a lot of fun. And at that point, I was maybe like getting close to being like 10 years into my career. And I kind of wanted to change, right? I enjoyed working at the university. I got a lot of time off. So I was able to travel the world. Between that and my teaching life, I've been to maybe like, 30 different countries, which I really kind of enjoyed. I was kind of a jack of all trades and I really wanted to do more security work. And as I was doing my full-time role as admin, I also then kind of fell into an adjunct instructor role, which is where essentially you teach like maybe one class at a time. Like a lot of folks do this, they teach a night class, but they still work full-time. So you work your 9 to 5, Then you get to go and teach a class, which I really enjoyed. I was doing a web application development class, a networking class, and security classes. I'm like, hey, maybe this is an opportunity. And this was kind of around the start of COVID, when I was getting kind of burned out with all like the mergers, the consolidations. Like maybe this is like a way for me to kind of pivot and learn security, teach security, and have, a really kind of positive impact on my community. So I did that around 2020. I switched over to being kind of a full-time IT and security instructor. That was great. I learned a ton. Like that's when I got really into Hack the Box, right? A lot of fun. At that point, my security expertise was a lot of like figuring out how things worked, right? Managing incidents, things of that nature, working with other teams around the university. But like the whole CTF thing, like I love doing that and talking about like CTFs, Hack the Box, how to learn this stuff in my classes. That was a lot of fun. But the classes at the four-year institution, they were like very academic. Like I think for those of you that are watching this, if you've taken like a college class, there's definitely like a high likelihood it's like essentially just like a professor goes up there and reads through a slide deck, right? So you're not really learning a lot of like the hands-on keyboard stuff that I personally love, right? Or even practicing the soft skills that I think are super valuable for this field. It's more so just like learning the book material. And I'm like, man, like there has to be a better way I can learn this, practice this, and get that hands-on experience that I was really kind of missing. So at that point, I thought back to when I was at the technical college. I had like a lot of really good experience taking those hands-on keyboard style classes. And that technical college was just like 15 minutes from my house versus the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, which is like, 40 minutes each way. So I looked at the job board one day and there was an opportunity for full-time cybersecurity instructor. So I interviewed, I got the job, and I loved that role quite a bit. That was around like 2022. And I liked those classes a lot, all very much like hands-on keyboard, practical. I primarily taught like ethical hacking, web app security, but also, firewall security, login threat analysis, security 1, security 2. I'm in a bunch of their classes, and I also had the opportunity to work on with our cybersecurity club as a coach and a mentor. And I got to teach and coach National Cyber League, CCDC, which is the Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition. I got to give just even most recently talks at conferences like CyberCon, which is kind of one of the largest IT conferences here in Wisconsin. Do a lot of really cool things. So love that job. My colleague Mark, if you watch this, I really miss working with you. A lot of good experiences, but after teaching full time for about 4 years, I really, really missed like doing real IT work, right? So what did I do, right? I thought about how could I start maybe doing some work, maybe part-time, to keep, pique that interest. And as it happens, the individual that I replaced in my teaching job, his name was DJ Vogel. Before he was a teacher, he started a company here in the Milwaukee area called 403 Labs. He sold that company and then kind of was thought, maybe I'll go and teach for a few years. Left, I took his role. But the cool thing is I got to kind of know him after I kind of stepped into his role. We kind of became friends. And he started a company called GoScale where I get to work today. And today as we're recording this, I actually just realized this is our 2-year anniversary of GoScale, which is pretty cool. But talking with him, I had the opportunity to join on as like a part-time consultant. And that was pretty awesome. That's when I met my colleague Trent Miller, who's been on the show as well. And I started doing that about a year ago. Really love the part-time work, but it is tough to work a teaching job where you're working 40, 50, 60 hours a week and then find time, right, to do the consulting stuff. And leading up to that consulting job, I did a lot of studying, a lot of prep. As you may see, if you look on my LinkedIn, I did the OSCP. That was a lot of fun. I did the OSWP, which was the wireless one. And then, of course, Hack the Box, the CPTS, the CBBH. Those exams, like, I don't know how people can take them unless you have like a summer quote unquote off as an educator, right? They're like 10-day exams. Very hard. I love that. And then, of course, really wanting to do that, then having conversations with my predecessor, like, hey, like, how can I be involved? Then doing the part-time consulting. And it was a lot. And I had to make a choice this past spring. Do I try to do both? Do I stay as, an educator, or do I go and kind of jump back into a full-time practitioner role? So I jumped back into the full-time practitioner role now as of June. And yeah, full-time consulting, primarily doing pen testing in the application world. So web apps, APIs, cloud infrastructure, embedded systems testing, plus a whole host of other things like incident response, some GRC compliance work, kind of all over the board. And I love all that because it definitely keeps my mind happy, being able to see and do different things And doing like the IR work and the GRC work, that helps my testing abilities so much because I can apply those different perspectives as a tester and vice versa. And that's kind of how where I got to where I am today.
Nice. What a story. I mean, that was what an introduction. That your career is also your life story, it feels like. Which is
Yeah, no,
really
I
cool. You
love
really been doing it
computers.
for
I
a
don't know
long
what to
time.
say, right? This is my jam.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Yeah, I wish I was guys as early as start you did. 'Cause that's great that you had that support system that helped you um make it a career. So that's really cool. So before we get into further in the show, let's go ahead and do our security Mad Libs.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who don't know, security Mad Libs, Jim will have 40 seconds to answer 5 questions. If you answer all 5 questions in 40 seconds, he'll get a bonus 6 question unrelated to cybersecurity. And then we'll have a small discussion on that. My stopwatch ready? All right, here we go.
Pressure's on.
All right, Jim, are you ready?
I think I am. Ready as I'm going to be.
Your time will start as soon as I stop asking the first question. Jim, my favorite terminal theme is
Whatever is default.
the most brutal feedback I've ever received was
You're writing. Oh, sorry.
the
No, go for it.
riskiest move I ever pulled off during a test was
Mm, ooh, the put operation.
the weirdest pen test report request I got was to
I don't know. I don't know. Oh my gosh. Everything is so weird. Oh my gosh. What can I say? I don't know. I'm out of time. I don't know.
you can
My God.
pass if you want.
I'll pass. Yeah.
If I had to explain hacking to a grandparent, I'd say it's like.
A home inspector.
Do you want to go back to the weirdest pen test report request, or you can't come with something?
Weirdest question. Okay. Weirdest request on a pen test. I would say probably to look in a very specific individual.
That was over a minute.
You know,
That was
I failed. That's okay.
That's okay. That's a hard question. I mean, I would have to think a long time for that one too.
I see so much weird stuff all the time, every day. That's okay.
The weirdest pen test report request that I got, which isn't so weird now, but at the time it was because I was like, when I was getting my first pen test position, which is actually my current position, I'm still in my first pen test position. I'd have clients always arguing findings like, nah, that's not a finding. That's too high. Like, it needs to be downgraded. Like, this makes us look better, worse than what we actually are. Yada, yada, yada. And then one time I got a client who was like, hey, can you up the severity? I'm like, huh? Why?
I want something fixed.
It turns out that some clients will actually ask you to up the severity, which helps them justify more of a budget and more help when it comes to security.
100%. Yeah. Companies get pen tests done for all sorts of reasons.
Yeah. So yeah, that I didn't realize that. I didn't know that companies use pen tests to help justify security budgets and to get some backing by the company leadership and stuff. So your most interesting response was the most brutal feedback I ever received was your writing. It's interesting, but you want to explain why that happened?
I
and
mean,
what came of it?
This goes back a while, right? So again, thinking back, I'm a very tech-minded person, right? Growing up in particular, I did not take the spelling, English, grammar classes seriously at all. So when I first started getting into IT, thinking about writing reports, right? Even as a sysadmin at a university, you need to write them professionally, right? And I was not a good writer. My assistant dean at the time, very nice guy, but also very candid. He's like, yeah, your writing is crap. You need to work on that. And that's when it kind of hit me, I really need to work on that. And let me tell you, it's way more difficult to work on improving your writing in your 20s than when you're 10, 15 years old, right? But for sure, yeah, not a good writer, still not the best, but it's something you can work on and improve.
Yeah, and that's something that a lot of professionals harp on in our field. Is you gotta know how to write. It's a soft skill. We talk about soft skills a lot in a general sense, but that's just one of many soft skills that you have to have. And that's why the certs that require report writing are some of the more sought after certifications to get, because report writing isn't easy, and writing a good one is what separates it's what separates you as a pen tester, I think, a little
Yeah, it
bit
is. It is
because
your work. It's what the client sees. It's how they perceive the quality of your work. A lot of times, they don't really care how much you found. They just care about how it's presented and how it's communicated.
yeah, it reminds me of that saying, it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
And yeah, and your pen test report, that's your product. That's what you hand to the client. Like that's what they pay for. Um, it's important to get that right. Yeah, do you have any tips on how to improve writing since you went through the struggle?
For sure. I would definitely say, practice and then get feedback from people that you perceive as good writers. It's really difficult if you write something and then you read it like 20 times and tweak it 20 times. It's really valuable to get feedback from others, right? So like as an example, my wife, she's a much better writer than I am. And like, especially when I was doing things like the OSCP and the CPTS exam, I'm like, hey, like, what do you think about these mock reports I've written for like this box? I didn't hack the box. I'm gonna have to write this for real, right? And it's not like, something where I send it to my boss and he give me feedback back and forth that goes, directly quote unquote to the client. So yeah, work with people that you're comfortable with that you feel like can help coach you.
That's good advice. Yeah, I just won my first report for when I did the OSCP. That was my first like pen test report that I did. I did write like some hack the box blogs, I guess, but I never like submitted like a deliverable until I did the OSCP. It took me forever to write it, and I read it over 20, 30 times. And after I submitted, I read it over like another 7 times just
Same.
to
And it's like
get.
I kept finding like small grammatical things, right? Or
Yeah,
things that should have been in there that you thought were in there, but the 10th time you read it, you're like, oh, how did I miss that? Right.
my report. I was after I turned it in, and it was like my sixth time reading through the report again because I had nothing better to do because I had to go to Japan for an Air Force thing on a last minute whim. And as soon as I was done with the exam, so I'm like flying on this plane all the way to Japan, super long flight. And I'm like, oh, I had nothing to do but read this report. And every time I read it through, I found a new error. I found a new error.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna fail. I'm like, the technical details are here. I got the flags, but I'm making these errors. Like one time like one of the ones errors that I made was I wrote like, I'd give the section's number. I'd be like, okay, section 3.4, section 4.4, section 4.5. Well, I did like section 4.4 twice in a row. And I'm like, bro, what am I doing?
Yeah, it happens to all of us.
So going back into your academic period of when you were an instructor, so you've taught hundreds of students, and you did mention that you thought academia had like lacked hands-on skills.
Yeah.
And I would agree with that. Someone who has 2 degrees and I'm actually pursuing a third
Yeah.
degree
And
right
some of
now.
these programs that cost like $100,000. It's like, oh my gosh, like how are you even going to get a job that pays you enough to even pay off that debt, right? And yeah, just so many of like, oh, right.
So the lack of hands-on skill aside, what do you think the academic world gets right when it comes to preparing people for
Yeah.
cybersecurity? And what's your take on how necessary is a degree to get your first cybersecurity job?
Sure. So what is higher ed? What does education do really well? I think especially for people that are kind of nerds like I am, right? They for sure kind of push you out of like your safe zone and kind of put you in uncomfortable situations, right? I think about a traditional university where you have to go live in a dorm, interact with new peers, and then beyond that too, like when I was teaching classes in person, like I'd really harp on like we need to do group work, right? This is like practice for when you have a team meeting in the real world, right? So it really helps build those soft skills. I think that is super important. Teaches you how to communicate with different stakeholders as well. You have your advisors, your deans, your instructors, your classmates, and you kind of figure out like, okay, like these different stakeholders, I need to talk with them in different ways and with different types of responsiveness and all that stuff that goes into it. So I think like college really kind of prepares you for how to interact as an adult in the real world for sure. Like that's like one of the best things that being in an environment like that is. And then beyond that too, you're surrounding yourself with other kind of like probably mostly like-minded people, right? You're going to make a lot of friends that you will see and interact with for the rest of your careers. Like it's insane. People that I went to school with, I'm still friends with. We still chat. They're still in the industry. So it's a really good way to make friends, and you can help each other out, right? For opportunities or when things get tough to bounce ideas off of, you name it. So those are some things that college does really well, and there's opportunities as well, as I mentioned, those competitions to really kind of show your motivation, and it kind of gives you a pass to kind of really take on opportunities without experience, like internships, winning a CTF or placing really well in CCDC or National Cyber League. That kind of gives you some real exposure, so it can open up a lot of possibility in terms of where you can go.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The second part of that question, I'm gonna ask it again. On a scale of 1 to 10, like how important do you think that a degree is? Like, would
Yeah.
you
So, how
recommend?
important do I think a degree is? I think it totally depends on the individual. I think if you're like 18, 19, 20, and you're still kind of figuring things out, I wouldn't go to an expensive university. Like, I really love Waukesha County Technical College because the classes were like $500 a piece, right? Like, it is a very safe place to fail. Like, you can go to a school like that, spend a couple $100, and then decide, like, is IT or cybersecurity the right path for you? And if it is, great, right? Hopefully you have some real kind of hands-on technical classes and hands-on extracurriculars like cybersecurity club. But if not, you've just figured that out, very low cost, and you can sort of put together your own game plan. And on the flip side, if you're like, hey, like, okay, like this is not for me, like this is not my jam, it's okay, right? It's a small stakes risk, and you can move on. So for those that are younger, I think it's a good thing to definitely consider. But if you're like in your late 20s, early 30s, and you've had a lot of life experience and you know how to learn and you kind of know what you're already going to enjoy, then I think it's cool to like self-study and figure things out and use those soft skills that you've developed over life to figure out those communities that you can network with and find, the side door to a job rather than just like blindly applying without any experience to an opportunity.
Great response. I'm not gonna throw my opinion there because I have a few more questions and we're running out of time. So the next question I have for you here, you talked about in your introduction how GRC and incident response, like it helps you be a better pen tester. And I'm wondering, does it hurt you in any way to have that broad experience and not have like a laser focus on pen testing at times? Because sometimes I feel like as because I do web apps and
Hmm.
network pen tests, sometimes I feel like I'm at a disadvantage because I'm like spreading myself in two different disciplines within pen testing, and I can't become a web app expert or a network expert because I'm like doing these things at the same time. So how do you manage that? How do you balance that? And yeah, how does it hurt you if at all?
Yeah, that's a really good point. But honestly, I think it really depends on like the individual, right? Like I like seeing different things. I like learning different things. I like learning something in a different domain and applying it to something else, right? Um, so if you're like, I really want to specialize and do like solely web apps, like that's great. You can become like a really like, elite level web app tester. But you also have to think about like, okay, then what is my next step, right? Am I going to do this until I retire? Like what's going to come after that, right? So I don't think it's bad, but have a plan of like, okay, how are you going to use this skill set in the future? And if you love doing web apps or whatever it might be, you want to specialize, that's great. But for me, right, I try to use the opportunities that I see, like doing the IR GRC work, as opportunities to learn and think about incident response. Like, how do our adversaries actually damage these organizations? How do they get in? What are their tactics and techniques? And I can apply that to my testing work. And then from a GRC perspective, I think, okay, now how can I communicate this to leadership? What does this mean from a compliance standpoint? So it is difficult, but then also like doing for me one thing for 8 hours is a lot. And I like that I get to break it up, right? Do some testing in the morning, maybe do some IR work in the afternoon, put together something for some, a compliance thing for a client. I enjoy that variety. And so again, it comes down to the individual.
Yeah, I like a variety too. I mean, there's a reason why I have some non pen testing cybersecurity certs. And one thing that I'm really highly interested in are these AI security certs there's a couple of them that are in beta. There's one from CompTIA that's AI Sec AI Plus, and then there's another one from ISACA that's in beta, and it's all about AI risk management. And like, I want to learn this
Hmm.
stuff because I'm very bullish on AI. I don't think it's going away anytime soon, and I'm like obsessed with AI right now because I know that's where the future's heading, and I know it's going to be a huge problem in terms of cybersecurity and risk for many organizations, and I just want to be on the forefront of that. So that's like one thing. Like, yeah, I want to be a great expert web app pen tester. I want to be a great expert network pen tester, but I mean, I take a time out to like go learn this AI stuff. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to help me give value to my clients more because it gives you the context, like you said, like you can seeing things from different side perspective. It does come back to your testing. And there's nothing wrong with specializing if the people are listening and watching. Like if you want to specialize, that's great too. Like I said, there's advantages to that too. Like you're able to get like an expert level certification like faster than someone like me who keeps branching out all these different domains. So there's pros and cons of both, and it's really comes down to what kind of person you are. Like me and Jim here, we like the broad
Yeah, I don't want
generalist.
to get bored or burned out, right? This keeps my mind busy in the right place.
Right? Yeah, totally agree. All right, Jim. So we're running out of time, so I want to ask you the final question here.
Okay.
Do you have any additional cybersecurity hot takes or hidden wisdom you'd like to share?
Yeah, okay. If you are a student or someone that's trying to break in the field, if you know this is what you want to do, uh, don't give up. Keep learning. Work with your community, and I'd highly recommend like reach out to like your local meetup groups. Like here in the Milwaukee area, we have MilSec, MadSec, we have DC 608. Do you find those groups? Go to your local conferences. Meet people face to face. Everybody that I know that has gotten jobs as consultants, pen testers, you name it. At least in my circle, none of us have applied blindly to a job board. We've made friends, and when those opportunities come about, they get pulled in. So don't give up. Keep learning, network, make friends, and eventually you will find success.
And I have a follow-up question. Do you think this is gonna be a hot take? I want to inject a hot take here because we got a little bit of time here. I know it's a final wisdom, but we do have time. My hot take is this, and I want to see if you agree with it, and if you disagree, let me know. I think networking is a little overrated if you don't have some kind of skill. And the reason why I say that is because I found it easier to connect with people when you have a certain skill set. Like after you get a few certifications, like people start to take notice. Like I feel like it's harder to network when you have like nothing to show for. Like you haven't done any projects, you haven't got any certs, you haven't cracked open a computer. You know what I mean? So what do you think about that?
I don't think it's a waste of time at all because let's say you're 18, 19, 20-year-old, you're like, hey, I think I want to go and do IT. You could go to those events, talk to people like, do I need a degree? Should I spend $100,000 here or should I spend $200 on Hack the Box Academy, right? You can talk with people, get those opinions, and you will find people that want to help mentor you. And mentorship can start at like level 0. That's where we all start when we're learning this stuff. And again, because an IT role kind of awkward and introverted, it's good to put your foot out there. Yeah, it's difficult to make those connections, but everybody's been in that same spot before. So I would say do it anyways. Go network.
Great. Well, thanks for the wisdom, Jim, and thanks for being on the show. Where can the audience get a hold of you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. That's going to be the best spot. Feel free to connect with me, send me a message. It may take me a bit to get back to you, but I will get back to you, especially if you're persistent.
And audience, best place to reach me is in the YouTube comments. Audience, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Hopefully I see you in the next episode. Share the show with your friends. That's the way to network, by the way. Hopefully I see you in the next episode. Peace out. Take care. Have a good one. This is Kyser and Jim signing off.